Look, lady, I don't work for you. Let go of me.
A pretty little neck. I bet it would break easy.
She was brought in to save one of the biggest shows on television, but behind the scenes, it nearly broke her. Decades later, Cheryl Ladd still refuses to speak to her former co-star. What went so wrong between two of television's brightest stars? Stay tuned, because the truth is darker, deeper, and more personal than anyone ever expected. Before Cheryl Ladd became a household name, her path to stardom was anything but smooth. She was not born into fame, and she did not catch her big break overnight. In fact, she started her career not even as an actress, but as a singer, lending her voice to animated cartoons. Most fans have no idea that she was the singing voice of Melody on Josie and the Pussycats in the early 1970s. It paid the bills, but it was far from glamorous. She spent years doing guest appearances, low-budget projects, and anything else that might keep her dream alive. Hollywood can be a brutal place, and for Cheryl, the clock felt like it was ticking fast. She had talent, and she had the look, but the right opportunity kept slipping through her fingers. Friends say she was just about ready to pack it all in when the phone finally rang. The call came from Charlie's Angels. The show had just exploded in popularity, but trouble was already brewing. Farrah Fawcett, the breakout star and America's sweetheart, had decided to leave after just one season. The producers were scrambling. Replacing someone like Farrah was risky, maybe even impossible, but they were desperate to keep the momentum alive. That is when they chose Cheryl Ladd. Her assignment? Step into the spotlight and try to win over an audience still obsessed with Farrah's every move. And she was not playing the same character. She would be introduced as Farrah's younger sister, a clever way to maintain continuity, but also a risky move. The pressure was immediate. Fans were skeptical. The media was relentless. And not everyone on set welcomed her with open arms, but Cheryl handled it with grace. She smiled through interviews, showed up on time, and delivered her lines like a pro. Viewers slowly began to accept her, and ratings remained strong. From the outside, it looked like a success story, but behind the scenes, a much darker story was starting to unfold. What many did not see was the emotional weight Cheryl carried in silence. Every smile hid a hint of unease. Every scene filmed was another test of endurance. Because for Cheryl, fitting in with the cast would prove far harder than winning over the audience. From the moment Cheryl arrived on set, the energy shifted. The departure of Farrah Fawcett had left a noticeable gap, and Cheryl, despite her charm and professionalism, was seen by some as an outsider, trying to fill shoes that no one wanted replaced. The producers may have welcomed her, but not everyone on set shared their enthusiasm. The tension was not loud or dramatic at first. It was subtle. A cold glance, a missing smile, a quick walk past her in the hallway without so much as a hello. Cheryl, always gracious in public, later admitted that her early days on Charlie's Angels felt more like walking on eggshells than joining a sisterhood. One co-star in particular, who had been part of the original trio, seemed especially distant. Crew members began whispering about the chilly atmosphere. Cheryl's attempts at casual conversation were often met with short replies or polite nods. During breaks, the other angels huddled together while Cheryl sat alone with her script. Some chalked it up to the stress of a high-pressure show, but others saw something deeper, a quiet resistance to accepting her. It was not just the cast either. There was a ripple effect. Certain crew members followed the tone set by the more established stars. When they saw Cheryl being excluded, they mirrored that behavior, perhaps unconsciously. It was like an invisible line had been drawn, and Cheryl had been placed on the outside of it. Still, Cheryl refused to let it break her spirit. She kept showing up. She learned her lines. She stayed late when scenes ran over. She brought kindness to the set, hoping it would eventually thaw the ice. It was not a matter of ego. Cheryl was not trying to outshine anyone. She just wanted to do her job and be part of something great. But no matter how hard she tried, there was one person who simply refused to let her in. And Cheryl was starting to feel it more with each passing week. The long days, the silent treatment, the growing sense that no matter how well she performed, she would always be seen as the replacement, never a true equal. And soon, that quiet tension would erupt into something no one could ignore. The icy atmosphere Cheryl Ladd faced had a source, and her name was Kate Jackson. At the time, Kate was seen as the serious angel. She had helped shape the show's tone and had a strong creative voice behind the scenes. But with that influence came intensity. And when Cheryl stepped into the spotlight, Kate did not hide her displeasure. According to multiple reports from the set, Kate had openly questioned why Cheryl was chosen, allegedly referring to her as just another blonde Barbie doll. It stung, not just because of the words, but because of who said them. This was not petty gossip. Even decades later, insiders still talk about the friction between the two women. And it was not just about personality. Kate reportedly felt the show had started to lose its substance, and saw Cheryl's casting as a move toward style over depth. Whether that was fair or not, it created an invisible wall between them that only grew taller with time. It started with eye rolls and sarcastic comments. When Cheryl would offer suggestions during rehearsals, Kate would interrupt or ignore her. During table reads, Kate allegedly refused to make eye contact. One crew member described the mood as cold enough to see your breath. Still, Cheryl stayed quiet. She believed the work should speak for itself, and she was not there to make enemies. Jacqueline Smith, the third angel, often found herself stuck in the middle. She got along with both women, but even she could not deny the shift in energy when Cheryl and Kate were in the same room. Over time, Cheryl stopped trying to force a connection. She kept her distance, stayed professional, and focused on her scenes. But resentment has a way of festering, and it was clear that something was building just beneath the surface. To some watching from the sidelines, it seemed like a power struggle. Kate had always been the anchor of the show's emotional weight. Cheryl's arrival shifted that balance, even if unintentionally. The show was changing, and not everyone was willing to change with it. And then came the day that everything finally boiled over. For a while, Cheryl Ladd managed to keep her head down and avoid open conflict. But even the calmest waters can hide strong undercurrents, and the tension between her and Kate Jackson was reaching its breaking point. The final straw came during production on an episode that required extra rehearsal time. The script had gone through multiple rewrites, and Cheryl had been asked by producers to take on a few additional lines and a more central emotional arc. She was excited. It was a chance to prove herself not just as the new girl, but as a real actress with depth. Kate, however, saw it differently. According to multiple sources, she was furious about the changes. She believed the writers were favoring Cheryl at her expense, shifting the spotlight in a way that felt like betrayal. When the final version of the script was handed out, Kate reportedly slammed it down and stormed off set. What happened next would become one of the most whispered-about moments in the show's behind-the-scenes history. Kate confronted Cheryl privately in a dressing room. Voices were raised. Though the exact words were never made public, crew members nearby said they heard shouting, a door slam, and then silence. Minutes later, Cheryl walked out, visibly shaken, eyes red. She did not return for the rest of the day. It was the first time she had ever walked off set. The producers scrambled. They had a hit show on their hands, but their cast was falling apart. Attempts were made to patch things up. Meetings were held. Apologies suggested. But Cheryl did not want another confrontation. She was done trying to win someone over who clearly did not want peace. After that incident, she stopped speaking to Kate altogether unless they were filming a scene. Even for seasoned crew members, the change was startling. The tension had always been there, but now it was undeniable. Icy glares between takes, silent car rides to promotional events, and a backstage atmosphere that felt more like a courtroom than a film set. From the outside, nothing seemed different. The episodes aired as usual. The smiles stayed in place. But insiders knew something had shifted. What had once been quiet tension had turned into open hostility, and Cheryl had made up her mind. She would do the work, finish the season, and be civil on camera. But when the cameras stopped rolling, so would any relationship with her co-star. And for Cheryl, that decision would last a lifetime. After the blow-up behind the scenes, Cheryl Ladd could have gone public. She could have told her side of the story, defended herself, and called out the treatment she endured. But she did not. Instead, she chose silence. And that silence became louder than any tabloid headline. For the remainder of her time on Charlie's Angels, Cheryl remained the picture of professionalism. She showed up, knew her lines, and kept her emotions off camera. But once filming wrapped, she disappeared from anything that required being in the same room as Kate Jackson. There were cast photo shoots she skipped. There were events where producers had to make sure the two were seated apart, or Cheryl would not attend at all. In the early 2000s, fans noticed something strange. Several former cast members reunited for interviews and tributes, celebrating the legacy of the show. But Cheryl was missing. When asked, her team gave vague answers about scheduling conflicts. But insiders told a different story. Cheryl had no interest in sitting next to someone who made her feel unwelcome and undervalued for years. Her absence was not a coincidence. It was a statement. Tabloids began to speculate. Rumors of an old feud were reignited. Some suggested it was never really resolved. Others believed Cheryl was simply protecting herself, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Either way, fans began piecing it together. It was clear Cheryl still carried the weight of what happened. And while she had moved on with her life and career, there was one thing she would never do: pretend it never happened. Her bond with Jaclyn Smith remained strong, even decades later. The two appeared together at charity events, stayed in touch, and occasionally shared warm public memories about the show. But when Kate Jackson's name came up in interviews, Cheryl's tone would shift. She never trashed her co-star. She never stirred up drama, but she also never softened her stance. And what made it all the more striking was her consistency. Over the years, as other Hollywood feuds flared up and faded, Cheryl stayed quiet. She did not fuel gossip, but she never denied there had been hurt. It was clear something had happened that, for her, crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. And the way she avoided those topics made it clear there was still pain under the surface. At first, viewers were too caught up in the action-packed episodes to notice anything was wrong. The glamorous costumes, high-stakes cases, and glossy network promos did their job. But as the seasons rolled on, even casual fans started to sense that something was off, especially between Cheryl Ladd and Kate Jackson. Sharp-eyed viewers began picking up on their body language, scenes where their characters stood awkwardly apart, moments where one angel would speak and the other barely reacted. Online forums, especially in the early days of fan message boards, were full of speculation. Some fans thought the characters were simply written that way, while others believed the truth was bubbling just beneath the surface. Then came the interviews. In the early 2010s, Cheryl sat down for a retrospective about her career. The interviewer, clearly trying to stir the pot, asked if she kept in touch with any of her former angels. Cheryl smiled, spoke warmly about Jaclyn Smith, and then the question came, and what about Kate Jackson? Her answer? A single word. No. No explanation. No elaboration. Just a cool, definitive no. And that said more than a 5-minute monologue ever could. From that moment on, fans knew there was more to the story. Entertainment blogs picked up the clip, and the headlines rolled out. Feud still alive? Cheryl Ladd refuses to reconnect with co-star. Comment sections lit up with theories. Some defended Cheryl. Others tried to guess what really went down. But almost everyone agreed. The distance was not imagined. It was real, and it was still there. What made it more intriguing was how carefully Cheryl navigated the topic. She never disrespected Kate publicly, but she never offered a false smile either. Her honesty, subtle as it was, only fueled the mystery. Why was the wound still open after all these years? What exactly had happened to make reconciliation impossible? Fans began to rewatch old episodes with a different lens. They noticed every glance, every stiff exchange, every cold shoulder. And each time Cheryl was asked about the show and gave that same composed, distant response, The truth became harder to ignore. And just when fans thought they had heard everything, a few unexpected pieces of Kate Jackson's side started to surface. While Cheryl Ladd kept her distance and her dignity, Kate Jackson took a different approach. Silence, but of another kind. Over the years, she gave few interviews, and when she did, she almost never spoke about Charlie's Angels. It was as if that chapter of her life had been sealed shut, locked behind unspoken regrets and unresolved tension. Those close to Kate have quietly suggested that her time on the show was not just about clashing personalities. She had been under immense personal pressure. Behind the scenes, she battled serious health issues, including a diagnosis that would lead to multiple surgeries. On top of that, she was reportedly frustrated with the direction the show was taking. Kate had always envisioned Charlie's Angels as more than just fashion and fight scenes. She wanted substance, drama, real acting challenges. But as the show leaned further into glamour, she felt her influence slipping away. Some believe that frustration spilled over into her working relationships, that the coldness Cheryl experienced may not have been entirely personal, but rather the result of Kate's growing disillusionment with the industry and herself. She was dealing with more than just a new co-star. She was grappling with burnout, disappointment, and physical pain. And unfortunately, Cheryl may have become the target of that misplaced anger. Still, even with that context, Kate never made amends. She never addressed the feud publicly, never offered clarity or closure. In one rare interview from the late 1990s, when asked if she stayed in touch with her former co-stars, she laughed and said, "No, I have moved on." That was a long time ago. It was a deflection, and one that left fans with more questions than answers. There were no apologies, no acknowledgments, and no attempts at a quiet, private reconciliation either. For Cheryl, that silence may have been the final confirmation that nothing had changed, and never would. Whether it was pride, pain, or simply a desire to forget, Kate's silence became its own statement. And for Cheryl, that silence likely felt like confirmation that the past would never be acknowledged, let alone repaired. Whatever sympathy Kate might have earned through her personal struggles, one thing was clear. The bridge between her and Cheryl was not just broken, it had been burned. As the years passed, Cheryl Ladd built a life far removed from the drama of Charlie's Angels. She went on to star in dozens of television movies, released music albums, and even published books. Her personal life flourished as well. She married, raised a family, and embraced her role as a public figure with grace and warmth. To many, she became a symbol of quiet resilience, someone who had endured the harsh spotlight of Hollywood without letting it harden her. But one thing never changed. Cheryl Ladd never made peace with Kate Jackson. She never sought reconciliation and never accepted it if it was offered. Industry insiders say Cheryl has turned down several opportunities over the years to reunite with the original cast, especially if it involved sitting across from Kate. It was not about bitterness, it was about boundaries. When asked indirectly about the old feud, Cheryl has always maintained her composure. She gives careful, thoughtful answers. She does not rehash old wounds, but she never sugarcoats the past either. Her silence, her calm refusal to engage, speaks louder than any tabloid headline. In an industry where grudges are often turned into press tours and scandals into sales pitches, Cheryl chose dignity. She walked away from the chaos, and she never looked back. Even today, decades later, fans still wonder what exactly happened behind those studio walls. Was it a simple personality clash? Was it deeper, rooted in jealousy, fear, or unresolved pain? The full story may never be told. Cheryl is not interested in settling scores, and Kate has long retreated from the public eye. But what remains is the aftermath of a Cold War that never thawed. In the rare moments when she is asked about forgiveness, Cheryl speaks carefully. She believes in grace, in learning, in letting go. But she also believes in protecting your peace and walking away from people who do not value you. In the end, Cheryl Ladd did not need to fight back. She let her work and her silence say everything. She carved out a long, successful career while staying true to herself. And though she may never say the words out loud, her actions made it clear: forgiveness is not always required. Sometimes, moving on means walking away and never turning around.